There was a time when Emma Chamberlain drank coffee not to feel energized, but just to feel normal. Morning after morning, the cup wasn't about creativity or hustle. It was about survival. Because no one saw what happened after the cameras turned off. The exhaustion that didn't go away. The anxiety that showed up for no clear reason. The nights where sleep happened but recovery didn't. From the outside, her life looked balanced, successful, healthy. But internally, her body was running on constant alert. Emma wasn't tired because she lacked motivation. She wasn't burned out because she wasn't disciplined enough. She was exhausted because her nervous system never felt safe. Most people watching this video are unknowingly living the same way, doing all the right things, eating better, working harder, staying busy, and still feeling drained. What changed everything for Emma wasn't a diet. It wasn't quitting coffee. It wasn't another wellness trend. It was learning how energy is actually regulated inside the body through nervous system signals, metabolic timing, and stress recovery, the kind doctors see every day in real clinical practice. In other words, her body never got the signal that it was allowed to rest. And once she fixed that signal, everything else, sleep, focus, and energy fell into place. By the end of this video, you won't just understand Emma Chamberlain differently, you'll understand why you can be tired even when you're doing everything you were told was healthy. Before we go any further, let me be clear about one thing. This story isn't being explained by an influencer, not by a wellness coach, and not by someone selling motivation. It's being explained through real clinical logic. I'm Dr. Mick. For years, I've worked with people who look healthy on the outside, successful, disciplined, high-functioning, but feel exhausted, anxious, and drained underneath. Not because they're lazy, not because they're doing things wrong, but because their bodies are stuck in survival mode. In practice, we see this pattern every day. People who eat clean, people who work out, people who follow routines they were told are healthy, yet their sleep doesn't restore them. Their energy crashes without warning. Their anxiety feels disconnected from reality. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The body doesn't respond to effort. It responds to signals. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, no diet will fix that. No supplement will override it. No amount of discipline will outwork it. That's why Emma Chamberlain's story matters. Not because she's famous, but because her experience reflects a pattern we see clinically again and again. And once you understand that pattern, you stop chasing fixes and start restoring the system that controls everything. On the surface, Emma Chamberlain looked like someone who had it figured out. She was successful early, creative, independent, in control. Her days were full. Her schedule was packed. And from the outside, that looked like momentum. But inside her body, something very different was happening. Emma wasn't collapsing from exhaustion. She wasn't sick in an obvious way. She was functioning but at a cost. Her energy felt unpredictable. Some mornings she woke up already tired. Other days her mind raced even when nothing was wrong. Sleep didn't feel restorative. Rest didn't feel like rest. And the hardest part? There was no clear reason. That's the kind of exhaustion people don't talk about. Because it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like pushing through, like adapting, like telling yourself this is just what adulthood feels like. In Emma's case, anxiety quietly became part of her baseline. Not panic, but a constant background tension. Her body was always preparing for something, always alert, always bracing. This is extremely common in high-performing people. When life rewards productivity, the nervous system learns to stay on. And over time, the body forgets how to power down. What makes this especially confusing is that Emma was doing many things right. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't ignoring her health. She wasn't living in chaos. Which is why the problem went unnoticed for so long. Because when dysfunction looks like discipline, it hides in plain sight. Clinically, this is where people start blaming themselves. They assume they need more willpower, better routines, more control. But Emma's body wasn't asking for more effort. It was asking for permission to recover. Her system wasn't broken. It was overstimulated. And until that distinction is understood, no habit change truly sticks. That's why Emma's turning point didn't come from adding more. It came from recognizing that her body was stuck in a loop of stress, alertness, and incomplete recovery. Once that loop is identified, everything else in the story begins to make sense. When people hear gut health, they usually think about digestion, bloating, stomach pain, food reactions. But clinically, the gut is much more than that. It's one of the primary control centers for energy, mood, and stress response. In Emma's case, this was a missing piece. Not because she had a dramatic digestive disorder, but because her gut never felt regulated. Here's what most people don't realize. The gut and the nervous system are in constant conversation. They exchange signals all day long. If digestion is rushed, irritated, or inflamed, the body reads that as a form of stress. And when stress signals stay high, the nervous system stays alert. For Emma, this showed up subtly. Energy dips that didn't match her effort. Cravings that weren't about hunger. A constant feeling of being slightly off. Not sick, just not steady. This is common in people who live fast-paced lives. Eating on the go, inconsistent meals, too much stimulation around food, screens, caffeine, pressure. Even healthy foods can become stressful if the body never gets the signal that it's safe to digest. And safety is the key word here. Digestion only works optimally when the nervous system feels calm enough to allow it. If the body is always bracing, nutrients don't absorb well. Energy doesn't stabilize. Mood stays reactive. So the shift Emma made wasn't extreme. She didn't cut everything out. She didn't chase a perfect diet. She focused on regulation. More consistent meals, less chaos around eating, reducing foods and habits that spike stress instead of supporting digestion. This wasn't about being strict. It was about sending her body a new signal. You're safe now. You can process. You can restore. And once the gut stopped acting like a stress trigger, the nervous system finally had room to calm down. That's why gut health is never just about the stomach. It's about how safe your body feels on a daily basis. And until that foundation is stable, no amount of motivation, supplements, or willpower creates lasting energy. This was Emma's first real step toward regulation, and it set the stage for everything that came next. Most people think sleep is something you do at night. Clinically, that's not true. Sleep quality is decided long before your head hits the pillow. For Emma, this was a major turning point. She wasn't sleeping less. She was sleeping out of rhythm. Her body never fully understood when it was supposed to be alert and when it was supposed to shut down. This confusion is driven by cortisol, the hormone that controls alertness, energy, and stress response. Cortisol isn't bad. It's necessary, but it's meant to follow a pattern. Higher in the morning to help you wake up. Lower in the evening to allow rest. In Emma's case, that rhythm was blurred. Late nights, bright screens, creative work bleeding into recovery time. Her body learned one message: stay available. So even when she slept, her nervous system stayed partially on. That's why sleep didn't feel restorative. Clinically, this is something we see constantly. People say they sleep 8 hours, but they wake up tired, not because they need more sleep, but because their system never powered down. The shift Emma made wasn't dramatic. She didn't chase perfect sleep. She respected rhythm, more consistent sleep and wake times, clear separation between work and wind down, reducing stimulation in the hours before bed. These changes weren't about discipline. They were about teaching her body predictability. When the body knows what's coming, it relaxes. And when it relaxes, recovery finally begins. As cortisol patterns stabilized, something important happened. Her mornings felt clearer. Her energy stopped spiking and crashing. Her anxiety lost its edge. Not overnight, but steadily. That's how regulation works. You don't force the body into balance. You remove the confusion. For Emma, sleep wasn't a passive activity anymore. It became an active signal. It's safe to rest now. And once that signal was consistent, her system finally started repairing itself. This is why sleep isn't optional in any real health transformation. It's the foundation that allows every other habit to work. Coffee was never the enemy. Timing was. Most people think caffeine gives them energy. Clinically, that's not accurate. Caffeine doesn't create energy. It borrows alertness from the nervous system. In Emma's earlier routine, coffee was used as a correction tool. Tired? Coffee. Foggy? Coffee. Low mood? Coffee. The problem wasn't the amount, it was the message. When caffeine is used late in the day or repeatedly to push through fatigue, the body learns that exhaustion isn't allowed. That keeps cortisol elevated and blocks natural recovery signals. For Emma, it was about containment. Coffee became a morning tool, not a day-long crutch. Consumed after waking, once cortisol naturally rises, and stopped early enough to allow the nervous system to slow down. This small change had an outsized effect. Her afternoons became steadier. Her evenings felt calmer. Her sleep depth improved. Clinically, this makes sense. When caffeine stops masking fatigue, the body starts communicating honestly. You feel when you need rest. You recognize when you're overstimulated, and that awareness is powerful. Instead of fighting tiredness, Emma started responding to it. That's the difference between regulation and suppression. Caffeine was no longer driving her system. It was supporting it. And once energy stopped being artificially extended, her body finally had space to rebuild its own rhythm. This wasn't a dramatic lifestyle change. It was a precise adjustment. And often, that's all it takes to turn constant fatigue into stable, usable energy. One of the most misunderstood parts of Emma Chamberlain's health journey is her relationship with anxiety. People assume anxiety is something you either have or you don't. Clinically, that's not how it works. Anxiety is often a signal, not a flaw. In Emma's case, anxiety wasn't random. It was her body's way of saying, I'm overloaded. When the nervous system stays in alert mode for too long, the mind follows. Thoughts race. Small stressors feel heavy. Rest feels uncomfortable instead of calming. This is why telling someone to relax doesn't work. You can't think your way out of a nervous system that doesn't feel safe. Emma didn't eliminate anxiety overnight. She learned to lower the baseline. That's an important distinction. As her gut became calmer, as her sleep rhythm stabilized, and as caffeine stopped pushing her system, her anxiety had less fuel. Not because she forced calm, but because her body stopped bracing. When physiological stress decreases, emotional resilience increases. People become less reactive, more present, more flexible. For Emma, this meant something subtle but powerful. She stopped interpreting anxiety as weakness. She started treating it as feedback. Feedback that her system needed care, not criticism. That shift alone can change everything. Because when you stop fighting your body, it stops fighting you. Her openness about mental health wasn't just emotional honesty. It was regulation in action. Naming stress reduces it. Acknowledging limits restores balance. And as her system learned safety, her anxiety softened. Not disappeared, but manageable, predictable, human. This is why mental health can't be separated from physical health. They are not two systems, they are one conversation. And when that conversation becomes calmer, everything else in life becomes easier to handle. This is where most people misunderstand Emma Chamberlain's story. They try to copy outcomes instead of understanding systems. They ask, what does she eat? How much does she train? How many cups of coffee does she drink? But those details aren't the point, because the same habit can help one body and exhaust another. What Emma changed wasn't a checklist. It was the signal her body was receiving. Most people do the opposite. They pile on routines without asking what their system can tolerate. They wake up tired and add caffeine. They feel anxious and add workouts. They feel overwhelmed and add discipline, more effort, more pressure, more stimulation, and then they're surprised when their body pushes back. This isn't a motivation problem, it's a regulation problem. When the nervous system is already overloaded, adding more healthy habits can make things worse. That's why copying celebrity routines so often fails. You don't know what stage their system is in. Emma's changes worked because they were made at the right time for her body, not because they were trendy. Real health isn't about optimization, it's about timing. What your body needs now may be very different from what it needed 6 months ago. Until people understand that, they keep blaming themselves. They think they lack willpower when what they lack is feedback. Emma's story isn't a template to copy, it's a framework to understand. And once you stop chasing routines and start listening to signals, you stop fighting your body and start working with it. By this point, one thing should be clear. Emma Chamberlain didn't become healthier by doing more. She became healthier by doing what her body could finally respond to. That's the part most people miss. Real health isn't loud. It isn't extreme. And it usually doesn't look impressive from the outside. It looks boring, consistent meals, predictable sleep, boundaries around stimulation, respect for recovery, no hacks, no shortcuts, no constant pushing. The biggest shift in Emma's story wasn't a habit change, it was a mindset change. She stopped asking, how far can I push? And started asking, what helps my body feel safe enough to recover? That single question changes everything. Because once the body feels safe, energy returns naturally, focus stabilizes, mood becomes more resilient. You don't force these things, you allow them. This is why so many people feel stuck despite doing everything they were told was healthy. They're following rules without understanding regulation. Emma's journey shows something deeper. Health isn't about control. It's about communication, listening instead of overriding, responding instead of suppressing. And when that relationship improves, the body does what it's designed to do. It heals, it adapts, it balances. Not overnight, not perfectly, but sustainably. That's the real lesson here. Not Emma's routine, not her lifestyle, but the principle behind it. And once you understand that principle, you stop chasing health and start building it quietly from the inside out. Emma Chamberlain's story isn't important because she's famous. It's important because it reflects what so many people are living through quietly, feeling tired without knowing why, doing everything right and still feeling off. If this video helped you understand your body differently, then it did its job. Because real health doesn't start with copying routines. It starts with listening to signals. If you want more stories like this, where celebrity health is explained through real physiology, not trends, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if something in this video felt familiar, tell me in the comments. What part of this story sounded like your experience? In the next video, we'll break down another celebrity's health journey and uncover the hidden system behind it. Until then, take care of your body. It's been trying to talk to you.